Recording in progress. So we are recording a little debriefing session to help everybody in the group that may need some support in debriefing in their colleagues and the network in the future. So thank you for doing this, Dawn, this morning.
Right, it's ungodly hour.
It does feel like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, would you like to tell us about what happened for you? You said that you wanted to talk about why you only will conduct one ceremony or one wedding on one day.
Yeah, that's right. When I first qualified and got a few ceremonies under my belt, I hadn't really thought about how many bookings might be coming through, and two, I had this wild idea that you could probably do 2 a day if you were careful. And so I had a couple who had booked me to do their wedding, big sort of high society type wedding at Barrington Hall in just outside Cambridge. It was a hot June summer day, and very last minute I had a request from what turned out to be a Guardian journalist, but that's probably irrelevant. But she and her sisters were arranging a surprise vow renewal on their parents' 40th wedding anniversary, and it was at the pub near quite a famous venue in West Norfolk, northwest Norfolk. And I looked at the times and I thought, I could probably do that. Actually, they only wanted something brief, and so in my head I was thinking, yes, it won't be too much preparation, and I can just whiz over from Cambridge up to West Norfolk, and it won't be a problem because it's only 40 miles. So that was the scenario. So I was quite anxious because of the couple in Cambridge were extremely particular, and that's fine because it's their wedding and they've paid an awful lot of money for the venue, and all of the guests were coming from India and all over the world, and it was a beautiful wedding and a beautiful day. And that all finished, and I had 2 hours to get from that venue to the other venue and be at the other venue in plenty of time. So I had my camper van because my little plan was to maybe stop and just make myself a cup of tea on the way. So I stopped and made myself a cup of tea on the way, and all those sorts of things. And then came across the most God almighty snarl up of traffic about 10 miles from where I needed to get to. And it was a place I'd never been to before. And the sat-nav, for want of a better word, Google Maps, the signal over in West Norfolk, rural West Norfolk, as you know, is pretty dire. And so I couldn't find my way out of this traffic jam. So I just turned off the road onto another road. I thought, well, I'll just follow my nose. It's all right. It's not very far. It's only 10 miles. And to cut a very long story short, a very, very anxious and sweaty me, sort of threw the van into the shingly car park in the pub about 2 minutes before we were due to start, whereas normally I'd like to be there about 45 minutes before we started. And I just sort of ran a wet wipe over my face, picked up my folder, put on a different pair of shoes, and walked in as if nothing had happened, having promised the family that I would be there, in plenty of time. And so that's the scenario. It's not a dreadful thing. Nothing dreadful happened. Nobody died, and and I got there in time. But I just
The ceremony was delivered, but it was all of the anxiety for you.
Exactly, and it was the things that you don't really think about. So, like as a celebrant, you think about what could go wrong in the ceremony, or what might go wrong with your relationship with a client, for example, if you have a falling out before the ceremony, or they disagree with what you've written, or any of those things. But I hadn't really taken into account this travel thing, and also whether it's possible to do 2 ceremonies in one day. Now, if it's in the same venue, of course it is. I just will never. What I learned from that in debriefing terms was I'll never do that again, because the anxiety is just too much.
Yeah.
And what on earth would have happened if I hadn't got there on time? There was no phone signal, so I couldn't ring them. The other thing was I had never been to that second venue before, so I didn't really know where it was. I could visualize where it was on the map, but I was totally reliant on sat nav, and of course there wasn't any signal.
So after that event, what was your process in terms of reflection? Did you take time immediately afterwards, or was it a period of time before you realised that you wouldn't do that again?
Well, I think I drove her. You could say, well, you debrief yourself on the journey home, which was from there is about an hour and a half. But I didn't. I was just flooded with relief that I'd actually got there on time, and just put it in the back of my mind. But there's just those little mini flashbacks of the panic of, am I going to get there? Am I going to get there? What on earth are they going to think? Da 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 da. And then the other voice in my head would say, yeah, but they said it was all children, relaxed. And, you don't need to worry if you're going to be late. What can you do about it? All those calming things. But ultimately, you don't want to let people down, and it's not professional. Yeah. And that's how I felt. But what it left me with was this feeling that, well, the knowledge, not just the feeling, but I just hadn't left enough time. And I hadn't done my homework about how to get there properly. I was totally reliant on sat nav and a signal, both of which failed. And I just decided in the end that I would never do that again. I would be a 1 ceremony a day girl, and that was it. I was just being greedy. And I was responding to this sort of cry from the heart of this lovely ceremony that this family wanted to do for their parents, that their parents didn't know anything about. So I was responding emotionally to the request, which probably, I was going to say, isn't a good place to start, but it's just a bit like we've spoken to before, I guess. Worth just checking out your emotions when you first meet clients, about which bit of your brain are they engaging with, your sentimental Absolutely. Brain, your logical brain, your practical brain, all of those things. So
it's about listening to your intuition, isn't it? And I think you were really keen to be of support and of service to both of these couples, but the practicalities and the logistics of it all, and the signal.
Yeah, because we use the word booking as if it's just a transaction, but it isn't. It's loaded with all sorts of stuff. I'm never going to make, I'm not getting all psychoanalytical about it, but a booking is loaded. It's loaded with their personality, with how you respond to them, vice versa, where it is, whether you've been there before. There are sort of layers of it. And I don't want to, in this sort of debrief, in inverted commas, I'm not making heavy weather of it. I just wanted to say sometimes there are things that you can notice in retrospect where you can help yourself that you might have noticed earlier but chose not to, or you just hadn't had that heart-stopping experience, and so why would you even think about it?
No, I agree, and I think it's about taking the time to really reflect on those and gain those key insights after an experience like that, which you did, and have learned from it, and that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, brilliant, excellent. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything
Well,
else that you want to talk about with regards to that?
no, I don't think so. I mean, it was a fairly simple example, but it just ended up being a principle.
Yeah.
You know, I'll only ever do one a day because I don't need to feel like that. If
And
I end up, sorry,
I
go on.
wonder how many other people feel like that, because actually through my training, that was something that the Humanist UK training suggests, that you only do one a day.
Oh, really?
So I wonder whether or not that is something that people have fed back. They've had similar
Yeah,
experiences.
maybe. Yeah, I don't remember that in my training. It's not to say that it didn't happen. I just don't recall it. If it happened, I don't recall it.
I think it was more of advice than anything else, but it does
Yeah,
make sense for all the reasons you've described.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just
Brilliant.
stops you ending up with egg on your face, really.
Thank you, Dawn.
No, that's really lovely. Thanks.
I'll stop recording now. You can share it with the group.